GOP gubernatorial candidate Jeff Johnson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Oh, well, pretty well. Not as well as you're doing, presumably. You had a pretty significant endorsement yesterday in your run for governor.
Yeah, Marco Rubio actually came out and endorsed yesterday in the race, and I'm really happy about that. I don't think it fundamentally changes the race in any way, but what it does is it shows that there's real national attention on this race, and I think it gives me a little momentum going into State Central in a month or so.
Is it unusual I don't recall having sort of a national figure, like a senator from another state, stepping in and making an endorsement like this early in the process. Is this unusual, or is it just not something that I've noticed in the past?
No, it's very unusual. And in fact, in recent years, we haven't seen national candidates get involved in our governor's races much at all until the very end. And then even sometimes they have stayed out of it. I think the last time we saw something similar, a national figure step in, was in the Emmer Seifert race when Sarah Palin, I think it was the day before the state convention, endorsed Tom. But that was obviously, 7-8 months later than this. So this is really early, and it's going to be very helpful.
Well, yeah, and, we were talking yesterday about the Star Tribune and the I don't want to say bias, but the GOP candidates for governor don't get the same fair shake that the DFL candidates do. There's no surprise about that. And so when you have news like this, Jeff Johnson, and you stated it at the beginning of our conversation, it does provide the opportunity to get your name out there more, to another chance for you to sort of differentiate yourself between the rest of your fellow party candidates.
Yeah, it does, and I think it also helps. There's not a lot of Republican activists out there who will say, oh, Marco Rubio endorsed him, therefore I'm going to support him. I don't have any illusions of that. But I think it will give me some extra coverage, and it will have a lot of the undecided say, well, maybe I'll give him a second look because I like what Rubio stands for or who he was as a candidate. So I think that will help, and you do get a little coverage from it. I mean, the Star Tribune, it'll be another week before they put out the next story that says all the Republican candidates suck and everyone's looking for someone else.
Right.
But I can wait for that.
Well, along those same lines, how do you strike the balance? Do you work at trying to strike a balance between obviously differentiating yourself from the other members of the party that are running for the same office, and then also trying to appeal to those voters who may not be paying as close attention because there's not a D next to your name? Is there a lot of thought that goes into that? Is there any thought that goes into that at this part of the process?
Yeah, there is thought that goes into that. I mean, kind of trying to walk that line between focusing mostly right now on the endorsement, because that, at least for everyone in the race so far, none of us will move on unless we are endorsed, if someone else is endorsed. So that has to be the top priority, and it is for, I think, most of us right now, and that's what most of the travel is built on. But at least for me, we're also trying to build in what I would call general election campaign stops along with these endorsement and delegate stops. So you stop in with a local newspaper in Greater Minnesota, and they'll usually put you on the front page because they're excited that somebody actually stopped in, or try to get on the radio show that is not necessarily a partisan show or a Republican show, and maybe stop in with a chamber or, some sort of nonpartisan group at the same time. So, it's kind of a balancing act right now between the two, because if we're not also building for the general, all of a sudden it's going to be next August, and you're going to have an awful lot of work to do with the 95% of the population that hasn't paid any attention to that point.
I'm sure you've had some conversations with delegates since this news came out. What typically has the reaction been to Marco Rubio's endorsement?
It's been very positive. I think that people see it as a boost. I think it shows that I have some momentum. There are always going to be some activists who don't like certain national candidates, and Marco, has that group like every other candidate in the presidential race did in 2016. But overall, he's very popular with activists, and he won the caucus straw poll by a pretty large margin a couple of years ago, and I think that tells me that he's well respected And that's generally what I'm hearing from activists around the state. They're positive about it, and they see it as momentum.
Jeff Johnson, congratulations on the endorsement, and thanks for checking in with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
You guys.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Bye-bye.